Probably helps if I unmute. Wouldn't that be great? Okay. I didn't even know I muted myself. So I apologize for that. So everybody who read lips got a really good call there. So as I was saying, basically what I'm talking about is that we've got this low pressure system that is going to develop off the Florida coast. There it is right there. You see it? It's just off the east coast of Florida. That's the beginning of the surface low. If we go to the north, up across the Ohio Valley there, you can see we've got a low pressure system. Not really low pressure, but an upper level low pressure system and an Arctic front. That's what's producing the snow right now across the Ohio Valley. These are kind of come together and end up producing quite the significant storm off the Outer Banks. So, as I was mentioning earlier, the people on the coast that are watching, I know we have a ton of people that watch us on the coast. The real concern is going to be beach erosion, storm surge, and wind. So we're going to see some significant storm surge and wind on the coast. So even though there could be some wintry weather associated with this, the one thing that you got to be on guard for is a tropical storm type setup in the Outer Banks and coastal section. So even though this is a winter storm, it's going to have some of the impacts of a tropical system with those strong winds and storm surge. So just be very, very cautious on the coast that you don't let your guard down for some of that potential basically storm surge and wind type setup here. But that's the system kind of taking shape. And if we look at the setup for this, I'll show you the winter weather impacts. And you see most of our area, including eastern North Carolina, is either in limited to low impacts, which is primarily due to travel. This is going to be a significant travel hindrance for a lot of folks. So that area in yellow is going to be the area that will probably see some really rough travel as we go into the early morning hours on Saturday. Saturday, to me, is where we're going to see some of the worst conditions, because I'll show you in a minute that we're going to see some snow and rain, and then the temperature is going to fall, and that's going to cause some serious issues as we go into Saturday morning. So let me show you the setup for this. This is our surface map. You see the low pressure system developing off the coast, but notice the Arctic front moving in from the northwest. That Arctic front slides in here, and we see a little burst of snow and rain across the western Carolinas. As that Arctic front pushes off to the east, you're going to eventually see that push to the east, and it's going to merge with the coastal system and become a massive nor'easter. And that's where you're going to start to see the low really crank up and the wind pick up. But the snow is actually coming with that upper system. You see that little kind of broken cold front? That's actually where the snow is coming from. It's an upper level system that'll be sliding through and then pushing off to the east. And then behind the system, you're looking at significant cold air and wind. In fact, some of the coldest wind chills we've seen in a long time here in the Carolinas. This system, the thing I've been watching the last couple of days, these two pieces of energy calling what we call phasing. It's basically the two branches of the jet stream kind of teaming up to make one big storm. And that happens just over us and to our east. So while the storm actually intensifies east of us, we're still going to get this glancing blow of snow and rain. So let me show you this. This is kind of the headline here. We'll start early Friday morning. Let me back this up just a hair. So we'll start it basically tomorrow morning. Let's start at 7 a.m. So I'm going to stop it there for a second. There's a little bit of lag there. I'm looking at some of the questions. This seems to be a difficult storm to predict. I'm hearing outrageous predictions. Actually, no, it's been a fairly easy one. I think the outrageous predictions came from non-meteorologists and just a bunch of Facebook pages sharing what we call single deterministic run models 7 to 10 days out. Pretty clear cut. It's rain or snow. So, Carol, it's actually pretty significant. I think some of the sources maybe you're hearing from aren't as reputable, and I think that's the problem. And that's kind of the day and age we live in. There's just so much information out there, and people don't always check the source, and I think that becomes problematic. You see a lot of this online. I feel like I spend half my time now not forecasting, but trying to squelch rumors and just bad information that is out there. So let's focus on the good information. Here's what's going to happen. Friday morning, we've got the Arctic front and the upper level system approaching the mountains. So I'm going to stop this around midday tomorrow, so noontime. So this is for everybody in the mountains. Everybody in the mountains, your snow is likely going to start the middle of the day. That's why you're seeing a lot of school districts in the mountains start to have early closings tomorrow. They're basically going to go to school in the morning and they're going to call off school early because they expect conditions to deteriorate as the day goes on. And that's kind of what I would expect up there as well, because as we go through the day, that snow picks up, the wind picks up, and more importantly, the temperature drops. As the temperature drops, that's going to cause conditions to get worse. Now, two things to note here. As we get towards dinner time, we see rain spreading into the Piedmont. Now, initially, these temperatures are pretty warm tomorrow. There's a chance we could see some highs in the mid to upper 40s, close to 50 degrees. But that's going to lead to some really warm conditions early with temperatures in the 40s. But watch what happens as we go through time. As that upper level system moves over, the rain is going to flip to snow at some point. And how quickly that happens is going to be more of a determination of the snow amounts than the track, the intensity. Is it west, east, all those things we normally have to deal with? This is really about the duration of snow versus rain. And sometimes the weird thing is the heavier the rain comes down, it actually drags cold air to the surface and causes dynamic cooling. And we call this process called wet bulbing. We cool the column of air down below freezing all the way to the ground, or at least close enough that the snow can survive to the surface. The thing about snow, almost every precipitation amount starts as snow, but it melts on the way down. So even if it's 40 degrees at the surface, if the cold air comes down to 1,000 feet, there's not enough time in 1,000 feet for the snowflake to melt. So it still makes it to the ground as really wet, heavy snow. And that probably starts around 7 to 8 p.m. And at the same time, the temperature is starting to fall. With heavy precipitation, even with temperatures above freezing, you can get accumulation on road surfaces. And so I'm going to stop this right here at 10 p.m. So at 10 p.m., we've got snow falling, temperatures in the 30s. And right away, I can already see the questions here. Hey, it looks like it's east. I'm in Greer, or I'm in the upstate, or I'm in Shelby, or the foothills. Doesn't look like a lot. You got to remember, this is still a piece of guidance we use. We run it every hour. There's still some variation in it. And just to kind of highlight this, I'm going to go in and edit the data. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the model that you're looking at right here, and I'm going to adjust it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move it west by about 35 miles. So I've only moved the system west 35 miles, statute miles. And look at the difference. It basically puts heavier snow right over Charlotte, even back into Cleveland County. And the reason I do that is because the model's not precise as you might think. It's not going to give you exactly what happens. Modeling is just guidance. It's a tool to make a forecast. So you have to generally give an error, east, west, north, south, for that area of snow. And if you give that error, that means there's snow somewhere in our area that's going to be coming down pretty heavily. So don't read too much into the exact location. Look for the general area for the storm. So I just do that real quickly just to show you that, because if it's 35 miles west, that makes a big difference, and you end up seeing snow across the area. So I do think we'll see snow in many locations of the Piedmont. Now let's go further into the overnight hours. We get past midnight. This is where the snow is still falling. It's light to moderate at times. Even a heavy burst could see thunder snow, which is where we could see really heavy snow come down because the air aloft is so cold. We get some basically thunder and lightning out of this with the cold air aloft and even warmer air surface. You're saying warmer air, Brad, it's 32. Well, the temperature up around 15,000 feet is going to be like 30 below Celsius. Okay. That delta, or that temperature difference, is the same as if it's 90 degrees in the summer at the surface and it's 50 degrees up there. So that's a 40-degree difference, right? So if you still have that 40-degree difference, or in this case, 60, 70-degree difference, that's instability. You still get instability. Sometimes we get caught up in what the temperature is at the ground. It's really the temperature difference. If you have a difference of 40, 50, 60, 70 degrees, we call that lapse rates. As long as you have that, it doesn't really matter what the temperatures in between there. It's the difference, or the distance between the two, that's important. So that's how you can get thunder snow in the winter. If you have near freezing temperatures at the surface, but it's like well below zero aloft, that's still instability. We go through the overnight hours, and here's where the problems start arising. The temperature falls below 30. In fact, it gets into the upper 20s. The snow tapers off. But remember, this started as rain. Everything's wet. Then we had wet snow, and then we had snow and then the temperature plummets to 26 degrees in Charlotte, 27 Monroe, 24 Salisbury, 10 in Boone. So you could imagine everything, a flash freeze, everything is going to ice up, and it's going to be really slick Saturday morning. So the amounts, well, I'm going to show you those in a minute. It probably doesn't matter, because even if it was light, this is going to cause road issues. So a lot of folks always base the snow forecast on what it looks like outside. I'm basing this on the impact on the roads. The roads will be bad, and that's really going to be the issue. The roads will be icy. So be very careful Saturday morning, because as we go through Saturday, it takes until about midday for the temperature to get even close to freezing. So I get a ton of questions, and I'm sure there's a ton in here about, can I go here, travel there? I would just tell you, personally, I drive everywhere in the winter because I have to for my job. So I don't have a choice. So that's always a personal choice, in my opinion. But I will tell you what the conditions of the roads are, and then you can make the choice of whether you want to drive on those. The roads will be slick. Okay. There's going to be ice on the roads. There's going to be black ice. There's going to be slick spots. If you drive safe and you're accustomed and comfortable driving in it, you probably can get some places, but it's going to take you a super long period of time. If you're not comfortable with that, if you don't like driving in any conditions that are remotely slick, just avoid it until mid to late afternoon. It'll be sunny on Saturday afternoon. Temperatures will be back in the mid 30s. While that's not super warm, we should start to see the roads be wet, especially with salt on them and brine. I saw tonight, everything's being brined and salted right now. And so they should be okay by mid to late afternoon, because temperatures will be in the mid to upper 30s. In the mountains, you're not going to get out of the teens. Winterfest, I'll be up there tomorrow night and and Sunday for Winterfest. Probably never going to make it out of the teens on Saturday, and maybe only in the 20s on Sunday. And then Saturday night, everything refreezes again. So we could have icy spots again. So for church services again, Sunday morning, probably going to be some black ice issues to deal with. So how much? I know that's the big story. How much are we going to see? Well, I'm going to cut right to the chase. I'm not going to beat around the bush here at all. So here's a look at the snowfall map. This is kind of what I'm thinking right now. Generally 1 to 2 inches is what I'm thinking for most of our area. So 1 to 2 inches, but I do think there will be some pockets of 2 to 3 inches. And I'll be honest with you, there's going to be some bands of heavier snow, probably just east of I-77. And where those bands sets up, it's like trying to predict where an individual thunderstorm is going to be. I know there's going to be a thunderstorm on a summer day. Can't tell you exactly the precise county and town it's going to be over. It's just that skill set we don't have that. I know the ingredients are together in this area for banding to occur. And again, it's not a cop out, because I'm just being honest with you. I'm telling you what we know and what we don't know. I could lie to you and tell you specifics, but that would be lying to you. You got to remember, just because we can make precise estimates with the models doesn't mean they're accurate. Precision and accuracy aren't the same thing. So you got to be really careful. Just because the model can show you a precise area doesn't mean it's going to be accurate. But I do think somewhere in this area, from the Sandhills, central North Carolina, Greensboro, to maybe Salisbury to Charlotte, there could be some pockets of 2 to 3 inches mixed in with that general 1 to 2 inch amount. And so I'm sure I'm getting some questions, and I'm going to pop back over to the chat here in a second. I'll widen this out a little bit just so people can see a little wider view, because I know we have a lot of people that watch or follow me that aren't in the Charlotte metro or the western part of the state. I usually make the snowfall maps a little bit bigger than our viewing area, just so people outside, but I don't go too far. So I did make this pretty true to form to the coast. And you can see if there's going to be an area that overachieves or gets more snow out of this, it's going to be that area in northeastern North Carolina. So think of Elizabeth City up towards Norfolk, the areas around the Tidewater. Even the northern Outer Banks could end up getting some good snow out of this, and maybe a dusting down to Myrtle Beach. So just to give you kind of the highlights of where I think we'll see some of that. Good question there. Are there pockets of 6 to 10 inches in the mountains? Probably not. That's 4 to 6 up there. But here's the thing. I wouldn't be shocked if an area like Roan Mountain, Beach Mountain, Mount LeConte, those typical areas near the Tennessee line, those could be areas that could see a whole bunch more because of northwest flow. Rock Hill, it's right there on the map. You can see in York County, that's in the 1 to 2 inch range. Boston and New York City, Charlie. I would be hating to make that forecast because that is, you're looking at a corridor of the most populated and highest density population in the U.S. And there's a gradient. I'm not kidding. The gradient could be as little as 2 inches to 20 inches. Now, New York City, I think, is going to be on the short end of this. Boston, on the other hand, I think Boston's going to get clobbered. So for our viewers up there, man, and people watching online, that Boston, Eastern Massachusetts is probably the most sure bet for getting a good storm out of this. So I think that's the area that I would be very, if I was up there, I'd be a little prepared for being kind of hunkered down for a while. One of the things I like to show is the probabilities of snowfall. And again, this is just not Charlotte. This includes kind of the whole metro. And just to give you an idea, because snowfall is a unique thing. I was talking about this in my class today. I teach at UNC Charlotte in the meteorology department. We don't do this with rain. We don't give you specific rainfall amounts to the nearest 1/100th of an inch, but for some reason we decided to do it for snowfall. And I think we set ourselves up for failure. It's a whole precision versus accuracy thing. So I like to lay out the possibilities because it's not a true or false, answer. It's kind of a multiple choice, but you can show the curve here. The best or highest chance of snow is going to be that 1 to 2 inches, right? But there's still a 30% chance that could be a little bit less, and there's a 15% chance that could jump up to 2 to 4 inches. And I adjust this based on the forecast. What's the most likely outcome? And here are all the possibilities. So that's kind of, you can kind of see the ranges to give you an idea that it's not a singular forecast. There is some possibility. This could be a little less or a little more. The 1 to 2 inch is the highest probability. That's the most likely forecast right now based on what we're seeing. And as far as timing is concerned, I'll show up the timing graphic here because I think this is the key part. When does it start? I get this question quite a bit. 1 to 2 for Gastonia. Pretty much if you're outside the mountains in our area, it's 1 to 2 inches is the snowfall. So a trace to 2 inches is kind of the general trend. If you were to give like a general forecast, after 10 p.m., the weather gets bad until about 4 or 5 in the morning. And the slick spots are really after midnight because that's when the air temperature and the surface temperature drops below freezing. And that's where we're going to see probably the most widespread slick spots. We're not worried about freezing rain. We're not worried about power outages. This isn't like heavy, heavy snow. This is a snow that causes travel issues. So if you're looking at all the travel issues, it's really roads. This is all about travel. And if you guys remember last Friday, we saw a pretty good 2-inch snow across most of Charlotte. I think it's going to be similar type of impact just 6 hours later into Friday night. So instead of ending at midnight, things will be starting at midnight to 6 a.m. And unlike last week, which was all snow, this will be a little bit of rain. But the kind of travel conditions we saw at times last Friday are probably very similar, but over a much bigger area, if that helps kind of explain the thing. Now, the side story to this too, and it's not really a side story, are the winds. Let me back this up to Friday night. Because this is a massive nor'easter, we're going to have really strong winds on the coast. But inland, back here, we're going to see strong winds as well that at times could gust over 30, 35 miles an hour. Okay. So unlike last week, which was this nice, gentle, fluffy snow falling down, you're looking at snow that's blowing around. Visibilities will be reduced. It'll be very, very heavy and blowing around when it's coming down. So just be very, very careful. It'll feel like a ground blizzard at times with that wind. And on top of that, you don't want to be stuck out in this because once that wind picks up, the temperature is plummeting. We're going to have Arctic air moving in. And so when the Arctic air moves in, look at these wind chill temperatures, especially in the mountains. We're probably going to see wind chill advisories or warnings issued on top of the winter storm warnings. You can see that we'll have below zero wind chills in the mountains. And here in the Piedmont, I mean, some of these wind chills are going to be single digits and teens early Saturday morning. That's no joke. That is some of the coldest air we have seen in a long time. So the snow is one thing, but the cold and wind is going to be brutal. Blizzard conditions at times, especially in the mountains, yes, and maybe briefly in the Piedmont. But I think really the mountains, some of the high mountain peaks, will see near blizzard conditions this weekend. Why is there a small pocket of 2 to 4 inches in our area? It's actually 2 to 3 inches. I have bands of 2 to 3 inches because there will be small pockets where there's heavier snow. And I was explaining earlier how that has to do basically with almost thunderstorm type bands setting up. That will basically bring some brief heavy burst of snow. Is there anything I can do to bring the low closer to Charlotte? Unfortunately, no. And the funny thing is, it's this whole system. If we go back to the setup here, just to give you a little bit of weather knowledge here, this is what we call a Miller A setup, and it's a type of storm system that's our typical nor'easter. And these typically track just offshore, and they're bigger hits for the mid-Atlantic and Northeast. Well, this one's even further offshore, so the mid-Atlantic's not getting much of anything, and we're actually going to see heavier amounts in New England. The reason we're going to see the snow out of this is really the upper system that's coming through. The energy that's transferring to the coast to make this crank up is actually what's driving a lot of the snow we're going to see across our area. So as it moves through, that's when we're going to see some of the heavier snow amounts. And again, I'll kind of give you my bottom lines here, what I expect as we go through Friday. The first thing we got to know is it's going to start as rain. Then it's going to change to snow. A trace to 2 inches is kind of the general, but there will be some pockets a little higher. Slick road Saturday morning, and then again Sunday morning because of the refreeze of black ice, and windy and very cold both days. I can't emphasize the cold and wind enough, because if you're going to be spending any time outside Saturday or Sunday, this is not going to be the kind of weather you want exposed skin, because you can get frostbite really quickly. And I know a lot of us just don't have the gear. I ski, so I have a lot of good gear for skiing in this kind of weather. But if you don't have protection, you shouldn't be spending too much time outside on Saturday morning. And that's another reason why traveling is kind of dangerous, because, in your car, you're okay. But what if you get stuck and you're stranded? You don't have the gear to kind of get out. So I think that's another reason why I would advise, unless you're totally prepared, you're used to driving in this, or you really got to get somewhere, just put off travel Saturday morning until you get to the afternoon hours. I think if that's the one thing I can leave you with, that's the one thing I will leave you with. So what's going to happen overnight and tonight and tomorrow? We're going to watch this band of snow with the cold front moving in from the northwest, and we'll kind of see, where that snow sets up and how quickly it gets in the mountains. I'm kind of interested to see if that snow starts a little sooner than we think. And this is, you might hear me refer to as nowcasting. Once you get into this time frame, instead of just looking at a model, which so many people do, look at what's actually happening in the atmosphere. So where's the snow right now? Is it snowing in these locations? Is that snow further east, or is it more widespread than the model said? So then you need to adjust your forecast based on that. And so that's what you start doing. You start looking at satellite radar data, surface observations, reports from people on the ground, to get a good idea on what's going to happen as this pushes to the east. So let me quickly throw up the snowfall map again, because I know some of you missed that, and then I'll try to answer some questions. So if you have some questions, feel free to throw them into the comment section. I can see everybody commenting from Facebook, YouTube, that kind of stuff. Let's see. Is the upper low turning negative tilt? Would it pull? That's true, Charlie. If that were to happen, that would have to happen over us. So what he's referring to, the low would have to merge with the surface low, basically the two phasing of the two systems. That would have to happen over us or just to our south. And the negative tilt means the whole system tilts back to the west. That would drive heavy snow and moisture. You guys might have seen on my page earlier this week, it was the 25th, I posted the anniversary of the 2000 surprise storm. That's kind of what happened with that system. The negative tilt brought the heavy snow band all the way back into central North Carolina. And at the time, I wasn't here, though I feel bad from the forecasters. It was one of the worst busted forecasts of all time, especially in the Carolinas. The forecast was for like a flurries to like 1 to 3 inches, and ended up being 2 feet of snow. And that basically happened overnight. And what happened was that upper low really tilted back to the west. And a lot of folks at that time were over reliant on models, and they didn't see what was happening upstream and pay attention to what was going on currently. And it kind of caught them off guard. Could Greensboro get 3 to 5 inches? Probably not. The high end for this is is like in the 2 to 4 inch range. Monroe 2 to 3. No, you're in the 1 to 2 in Monroe. There's some pockets of 2 to 3 possible in that area, but you're generally in 1 to 2. Now, remember, I mean, this is splitting hairs. One of the things that I think people forget, the difference between 1 and 2 inches is literally 0.10 inches of water. So think about the tenth of an inch of rainfall. Did you get 2/10 of an inch or 1/10 or 3/10? That's the difference between 1 and 3 inches. Those are minute amounts of liquid. So it's not as big a deal as you might think. 1 inch of snow on these temperatures and what's going to happen are going to be just as icy as 3 inches of snow. So it's almost an impact-driven thing, which makes sense. Could Matthews get really bad ice? There's no ice. There's no ice in this forecast. It's rain or snow. So the only ice that would form is when things melt and refreeze on the roads, but no ice will be falling from the sky. Lancaster and Pageland is right there in the blue, 1 to 2. No ice. Let me repeat, no ice. This is a rain or snow event for every location in the Carolinas. There will be no ice falling from the sky. It is either going to be rain or snow. This is not an ice setup. 1 to 2 out your range in the Fayetteville area. 2 to 4, yes, Raleigh, you're right on that 2 to 4 inch range. I would tell you you're very close to 2 to 4. Yes, the convective bands, that's what I talk about, the pockets of 2 to 3 inches. That's where we could see convective bands in that area. Concord, you're right there on the map. You could see right there in the 1 to 2, but with pockets of 2 to 3. Lexington, you're in the 1 to 2 inch range. Yeah, so the map, I mean, I hope everybody can see the map. Most of these cities being called are actually displayed on there, so I'm hoping the map is showing up. Let me make sure it's showing up. So yeah, Lexington, I can try to point some of these out. Lexington's right up here. Concord's right there. Lancaster's right there. So those are the areas where we're seeing, reading on the map. Hamlet 1 to 2. Bobby, this is going to start basically after 10 p.m. With snow, but the rain could happen before there. So let's say after 6, I would be kind of watching the rain change to snow. Next week is warming up, Tina. Yes, mid-60s by the middle of next week. But I hope you're not ready for that to last, because there are signs it might flip back the other way too. Is this going to all stick? Well, it'll at least stick through the weekend, like the last time. Temperature drop quicker with a longer period of snow. That's probably the biggest issue, is if we see the rain change to snow quicker, that would up the totals. That's the only thing that's going to change the totals, is how much we're going to see. Is it going to be, several hours of snow, or is it going to be 2 hours of rain, that kind of thing. So no, rain to snow, everybody. There's no snow. Everybody, it's going to snow. That's why I said today, it's not a matter of if it's going to snow, it's a matter of how much. There will be snow falling from the sky in most locations. So any chance of airport delays or cancellations, there's always a chance of that, even without weather. So I would say that's a 100% chance. One thing about airlines, I hate answering those questions in this day and age. All the airlines have staffing issues because of COVID and sicknesses. And there's hundreds of delays every day without a flake of snow falling. So make sure you call ahead, because sometimes the weather just adds on to other problems. So be very careful. Chance of snow period starting. Yeah, of course. I mean, but we're only talking like an hour or two. There's not. I think the thing is, there's a lot of misconceptions that this is like, there's a lot of variables here. It really is a pretty straightforward forecast, honestly. For winter weather here, which is saying something, because typically we've got to worry about, is it rain, is it sleet, is it snow, are all three going to combine? I mean, it just makes for difficult. This is actually one of the easier forecasts I've had, because it's rain and snow. It's just a matter of how quickly that happens. So getting a lot of questions about the setup here. Here's the setup again. I'll show you the setup. And again, could it start sooner or later? Yes, but we're only talking plus or minus an hour or two. We're not talking like half a day, or it's if you plus or minus an hour to any of these numbers here, you're going to be close. So 6 p.m. it starts raining. Could that be 5 p.m.? Yes. Could it be 7 p.m.? Yes, but it's kind of in that range. Eventually, it changes to snow pretty quickly, mind you, probably 7 or 8 o'clock. So only about 2 hours of rain. Changes to snow, stays snow on and off throughout the night. And again, the heavy bands probably east of I-77, maybe thunder snow, which enhances the amounts. Temperature drops below freezing after midnight, and this is when the problems start, because once the air temperature drops below midnight, that's when the roads will get really icy, because regardless of whether you got a little bit of snow or a little bit of rain earlier in the evening, everything freezes up. So that's why Saturday morning, it probably the worst travel is going to be around sunrise or slightly after Saturday morning. That's when we really have some of the issues. Columbia, probably not much of anything, maybe a dusting. Yes, there will be black ice on the roads. That's the whole point. When anything freezes over, you're going to get ice on the roads. So you could have ice on Saturday and Sunday morning, honestly, because things will melt and refreeze. I wouldn't grab bread and milk unless you need it, Gino. Wadesboro, snow. So that's, all these locations, guys, are on the map. So hopefully you saw it. I'll pop it back up here. I almost want to put a searchable Google map so people can just plug their address in and get the numbers. So there's a look real quickly. Got a question about Indian land, 1 to 2 inches. So there you go. That's the map. Again, if you can't see your city on there, pick the city that's closest to your city. And you get a pretty good idea. Those pockets of 2 to 3 are the ones that are kind of be difficult. That's going to be kind of based on whether we see, some of that convective banding, we call it, and some of those, basically thin bands, but those will be hard to forecast until we get there. So what drives the banding of the snow? It's a good question, Kevin. That's kind of a meteorological question. Basically, what causes that is the dynamic cooling aloft. It gets really cold in the upper atmosphere as the cold upper low moves in. And even though it seems cold at the surface, that 30, 35 degree air to surface is much, much warmer than the temperatures up there. So that we call that the delta, the temperature difference. That's still instability. The atmosphere doesn't like to be imbalanced like that. So the air lifts up and creates rapid vertical motion. So that vertical motion creates icing in the top of the clouds, and you get the rubbing of the icing together, and that creates a static charge, which then becomes lightning. So you can get thunder snow in that situation. It's kind of cool. Let's see, Kannapolis, you're on the map right there in the blue there, just north of Concord. That would be in the 1 to 2 with pockets of 2 to 3. Let's see. You want to see Kinston. Okay, yeah, I moved the map earlier, so I'll show eastern North Carolina again because I know we have some people out east. So I'll show the whole state. And I did make this true to my forecast for the whole state. Once you get up into Virginia North, I wouldn't read into it. I didn't spend a lot of time forecasting that part of the storm. I really focused on the Carolinas. So out towards Kinston, you're in the 2 to 4 inch range. And if there's going to be higher amounts, that northeastern North Carolina, think Elizabeth City area, up in there, that's the area. And maybe I'll zoom in on that if I can. Let me see. So that's the area I think, Roanoke Rapids East, Kill Devil Hills, Northern Outer Banks would be interesting. I think there's going to be some cool pictures from the Northern Outer Banks because this is going to be a pretty significant storm for the Outer Banks from a snowfall standpoint possibly, but also the wind and storm surge. There could be significant storm surge in those areas and high winds. We could see 60-mile-an-hour winds out there. Gastonia, you're there just west of Charlotte in the 1 to 2. So those areas west of Charlotte are probably right on the trace. Wind in Charlotte, you're probably looking at 20 to 30 mile an hour winds with some higher gust possible. So be ready for that. Let me show you the winds real quick again. I'll pop those up. And again, these are the wind gust Friday night into Saturday morning. I'll stop this early Saturday morning because you can see some of these gusts could be close to 30 miles an hour. So really, really windy. And when you couple that with really cold temperatures, boy, the wind chill is going to be brutal. Brian, so you probably read a discussion of snow growth region. So snow growth region has to do in the vertical part of the atmosphere, the area where you have the coldest temperatures and the most moisture. We call that the snow growth region. So we look for a crossover there. Is that, and it's usually in the minus 12 to minus 17 degrees Celsius area. And if you see that, and you see a bunch of moisture in there, then that's the ideal snow growth region. So that's what you're hearing on some of those discussions. 4:30 to 5 a.m. will be rough travel everywhere Saturday morning. The funny thing about the weekend thing, it's only been 2 Friday nights in a row. The first storm was on a Sunday. So they've all been on the weekend, but we've had 2 Friday events and 1 Sunday event, which honestly, I know it's not great for your weekend plans, but from an impact standpoint, it's been a blessing because there's been less people on the road, less businesses, less schools open. And it's had a much lower impact than if this happened in the middle or early part of the week. So getting a lot of questions about travel, and let me go back to the map here because the map's always the most popular thing. So I'm not gonna pretend it's not. We'll put it up again. The only advice I can give you for travel, I hate making decisions for people because I'm somebody who has to travel in every type of weather regardless. I've had to drive to work in every storm so far. And so it's a little bit, it's hard for me to tell someone to stay home when I have to drive in it. But I'm also very good at driving in the snow. I'm prepared for it. I have an all-wheel drive vehicle. I have multiple routes to get home. I do take it very carefully. So I would say unless you're comfortable and you're prepared and your car is all ready to drive and take a long time to get where you're going, I would just recommend not doing it. It's like my wife, she hates driving in the snow, so she doesn't go anywhere unless I'm the one driving. So that's the one thing I would tell you. How many hours will the snow last? Just a couple hours, probably talking like 4, maybe 5 hours at the most. I'll go back to the future cast really quickly. I'll show this one more time because if you're just joining late, I know some of you missed it. This video is going to be posted on our YouTube page and on the Facebook page. You can go back and watch it. So we'll go back and see it. And of course, I'll have updated information at 11 o'clock on WCNC. So there's a real quick look at the rain to snow mix. And again, don't read in too much into the actual areas because this could be wider or narrower based on how it unfolds. But you see there's probably a burst of real heavy snow after midnight until about 3, 4 in the morning. And by 5 a.m., I would expect most of the snow to be out of here. But then look at the temperatures. That, to me, is the real story. That's why I said people, snow, snow, snow. That's all people hear. And it's like, it's not so much about how much snow. It's just the fact that we have moisture coming down and the temperature plummeting into the low and mid-20s. So that's going to cause the rough travel. So don't envision some beautiful winter wonderland where everything's coated in this nice just think about how the roads are going to be. That's all. There could not be any snow anywhere, but if they're on the roads and it's frozen, that's really what the issue is going to be Saturday morning. So just be very careful Saturday morning. I would advise not driving anywhere until after about midday when the temperatures warm up. The sun will be out, the wind will be blowing, so hopefully we can melt and dry the roads off because anything that's not dried off by Saturday night refreezes again because we'll be in the teens. You want to talk about cold air, wait till Saturday night. I mean, we're going to see some brutally cold temperatures. I'm going to stop this. How far I got? We'll stop this at about, let me see how far I can go out. Sunday morning. So you could see these temperatures Sunday morning. I mean, it's going to be super cold. So just a heads up, be very careful on Saturday morning. That would be the one time where if I was going to tell anyone not to travel Saturday morning until about noon. So stay in. See any more questions? Seems about it. So if you got, I'll try to go back through the comments and answer any questions. Of course, if you don't follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, I'm WX Brad. Pretty much anywhere you find me. I will post a vlog update tomorrow morning too, kind of with my last thoughts before the storm hits. It's always a good place to check as well. You can get all my maps and all this stuff is on my Facebook page, as well as our website, WCNC.com. We've got 2 beautiful articles on the storm coming up. And you can see all these maps there as well. I'll update those actually before I leave tonight with the latest totals. So I usually put a timestamp on there so you know exactly when I posted it. So it's the latest map. So that's the best place to go. And I highly recommend, if you don't, download the WCNC news app. It's always a great tool. You'll get notifications like this, and we stream these things to our app as well. So if you're away from your TV or away from your computer, you can watch us on the app as well. Hope you have a great night, everybody. I'll see you at 11. If not, stay tuned tomorrow. I'll have an updated vlog, I hope, by 10 a.m.-ish, maybe. Depends on when the data's coming in, just to give the last little thoughts on everything for tomorrow morning. Have a great night. I'll see you tonight at 11.